Welcome back to day 115 of our chess journey to 1500 ELO on chess.com. Let's just jump on ahead and find an opponent. So we're down to 1470. Let's see what we can get done here. We are playing against C-bar 84. We have the Sicilian. Somehow this name here feels familiar to me. Have we played this person before or not? I don't quite know. We'll have to see afterwards. Now I think we've seen this variation of the Sicilian, of the Najdorf rather. We've got a few options here. I don't want to spend too long. Let's come up to e6. It's always a good move. We could develop here now. We prepare d5 in some positions, although we don't necessarily want an isolated pawn. Now if the bishop comes down, we have this, which should be a good response. This bishop is already blunted if it comes out here. We could come out here. Only thing is, if we get this, then we don't have a pawn defending this pawn, but we get our bishop out quickly though, which might be quite good still. Sicilian defense open Scheveningen English attack with 7f3. Well, this isn't 7f3, it's a move order thing, I guess. Doesn't make a massive difference though. I think we'll come up here, most likely. Or do we have a better alternative? This move here tells me what I don't quite know. It's more passive than this at least. But now at least we know we don't want this, most likely, because our opponent is closer to trading off this bishop if it comes out there. I think we'll just come out here, prepare to castle. Yeah, this is what our opponent played, which if we had played like this, they could have just traded off our bishop there. I think our opponent now is likely to castle and play on the d file, which is probably a pretty good setup. How about coming out here? Because we can't quite play this, I think, because we end up with an isolated pawn. This, this, and this. Probably okay. I was looking at something interesting here, namely queen to a5. Kind of playing for this in another way. If this is played, we can take here. But honestly, our opponent will castle first and it won't do a whole lot. So we have this, or we have this perhaps. I think I'd like to come up actually, disallowing this bishop from coming out while playing for this d5 square. And then I guess we'll end up with our knight positioned slightly more defensively. Now I don't think we want to come here, because then we lose our control over c6 here, so the knight can start jumping in and being annoying. We've had a similar position recently with this same reasoning here. I don't quite remember which game, but we did have something not all that different. I think it's not unlikely here for our opponent to start pushing pawns, castling queenside and being, well, aggressive to say the least. This is probably the next move. I wanted to play this. One of the reasons was to disallow the bishop from coming out, to easily connect the rooks here. Now it's going to have to come out behind a pawn and behind our opponent's pawn chain here, which, well, it might open up still, but it's more passive. Still, this might be good. Looking to open up here when this pawn is removed and staring down where our king is going to land. This is an interesting move though. I guess our opponent here might be looking at applying pressure to this pawn by opening up the queen and the rook towards the pawn here. At least that's what I assume the idea is, which I think is probably quite good. So I can definitely see why our opponent is doing so. Still, I think we can do this. Our opponent will castle, we can castle, and we just have to find some time and way perhaps of ridding ourselves of this eternal weakness and annoying pawn on d6, because we haven't quite gotten to play d5 yet. Our opponent castles. It seems they are quite familiar with the position. We either come here, I think, but in this position it loses this pawn. No, it doesn't, because if the queen takes, that's no good. But still, I think we'll start off by castling, and then we can look at other moves. We have the immediate g4. Our opponent here is looking to fight. This, let's calculate quickly. Here, here, and here even. And this is probably good, because luckily our opponent does not have minor pieces targeting this square, whereas we have two, which means we can fight for this pawn push. Here and here though, is this good or is it bad? Well, first of all, if we come here, the pawn here is hanging and this pawn is hanging. The pawn can't be pushed. First of all, it loses the rook and it loses... I guess it just loses in general. So let's just start off by pushing d5. Because luckily, it's important here to take note, the queen is in front of the rook, is an important point here. We can't push to d4 though, it doesn't quite work. Hopefully I didn't miss g5 here, being an in-between move, kicking our knight, because that might be more than awkward if it works. We would have to move the knight. It's played. So now we have to come up with a move. First of all, we can't push. Then our opponent takes, or takes. Just does not work. So let's not calculate that. Can't come here. If we go here, wait a second, let's have a look. Let's say we go here, then I think we're just going to get forced into an isolated pawn position, which it's not fun, but it is what it is, I guess. Can't do a whole lot about it. So I'm thinking here maybe, and looking to reposition here, but then this doesn't quite work. If we go here, if pawn takes, and we take, still I think we even lose a full pawn. Doesn't look promising. Those are the kinds of really annoying blunders, missing moves like this. But I will just have to make sure there is nothing else here. Because we go back right, and obviously this can't take because it loses material. So first of all, the pawn has to take. But if the pawn takes, this pawn hangs and we have an immediate fork. So this is not as bad as it might perhaps have been otherwise. But is this our best retreating square? Maybe, because we could come here afterwards. Because alternatively we go here and we can't come here and we're kind of stuck. If we come here, we kind of block our queen, which is not ideal. So let's come here. If pawn takes, well, it can take, I guess. And why did I think we could take this pawn if pawn takes? Not quite sure. This is likely to be played, but still, I think we might be able to apply pressure to the pawn here after it takes. Unless this is a fork, which apparently it seems like it might be. Yeah, this is kind of falling apart here. We can't take this. Or maybe there is some tactic here. If we take and the knight takes. No, this doesn't work still because we're just kind of letting our position fall apart there, which is no good. What happens here? Then we lose control over this square by moving our knight. Once again, no good. So this is definitely not good at all. The knight here, we can't move it because the pawn can push. If we take and get this and this, might be our best chance of a position here, but it's going to be played down a pawn. So let's have a look at this first maybe. If knight takes, I don't love that either. Can this knight move? If we go here, if the pawn pushes, our bishop is trapped. No, it's not, because we can just take and it doesn't lose material for us. Because, once again, the queen is in front. So I think this might be our move here, just to get a piece out. Our position here really sucks, but what can you do? Just have to calculate this though. And here, this doesn't work for us. Oh, that's actually bad. We don't want the pawn to be able to take on d7. So do we have a single good move here? Do we have a single move that does not just lose? I do not want to trade off this bishop because the pressure it's exerting down here is fantastic. I think maybe playing this first might be good, or we could come down here and look at the knight perhaps. Here if takes, we have takes, takes, takes. This might be played. I think we'll come out with the bishop. It's not like we're going to take this pawn anyways and open up this. At least I don't think so. And still it's defended and can be even more defended. This was difficult to calculate. I'm hoping I made the correct decision as a follow-up to what seems like a blundered pawn. I'm just impressed by the speed with which our opponent here is able to play. But I guess it does make some sense because as white you're able to play the positions more often. Wow, this is creative. We're forced to take because it's essentially a fork. And once this is played, the knight comes in and kind of forks the pawn and the bishop. But are we forced to take? Could we perhaps take here? I don't think this works. No, this probably doesn't work. But this might actually be even better than... It might have to be played actually. But this, and we have this move even. Winning another pawn. And then... I think we have to trade down the exchange, but I think this is the best we'll get. Which it's just a funny move, to be honest. But I don't think it's bad. I think this is how we probably regain some chances of playing the position here. First of all, we have the check. It's just what happens here if the queen blocks. Of course, if the bishop blocks, we're quite happy. But let's say this queen blocks. We can't ever come here because, well, it just doesn't work. We do have the option here of blocking with the knight. But then here, this pawn is defended. Just doesn't look pleasant at all. I think we'll come out here. This might not be the best move, but I'm finding it a bit difficult here to find, I guess, what you'd call the best moves here. Because now we can't come here and block. This is a decision I guess I made, allowing to trade down the material. But I think I'd like to take this when we have the chance to. First of all, the bishop will take, or well, it could actually wait. It does not have to take immediately. But considering our ELO range here, or level of play, our opponent is more likely to take than not. Now we're playing one pawn and a knight for a rook, but our opponent has got two pawn islands, which might work in our favor. I say let's come out here, target the pawn, prevent it from moving up, and then we'll see what we can do from here. I'd like to get this knight out as well, because this doesn't look like a whole lot of fun. Looks like it kind of shuts us down to some degree, but we'll have to see. Luckily here the knight comes back, which is I think a bit too slow by our opponent. Now we have time to play this and cover our back rank. This is covered and this is covered, and the queen can't infiltrate there. Let's come out. We can't quite come to c8 here because we only have one rook. So there is no rook to pressure together with our rook here on a8. We might consider coming here with the knight and just being annoying, hitting this pawn. This bishop doesn't do a whole lot. This is not threatened. Let's come here, I think, making it annoying trying to defend the pawn. We might jump in here in some positions as well. Still, the pawn can't move, and our queen here can't get removed. Still can't come here because we have no control of c8. So what do? We could push here, but I like to just get the king off of this diagonal, so there is no check here and maybe winning material or forcing a trade or something at some point. h6 comes to mind, preventing the pawn from keeping the push up, because if it gets to h6 it might get annoying. Now the g file is annoying still, but we'll have to see what we can do about it. Now those pieces here are tied down to the defense of this pawn, which is good for us for the time being. The rooks can move still. We can't get forced back this way, but a slow maneuver might force us back. This might be playable though, but then we could have some discovered attacks set up against us, which might not be entirely fun. This is played, but this I think is good for us because there is no way to make the pawn move unless, I guess, our opponent might force a queen trade. But if they do, well, then they force a queen trade, I guess. I want to move this knight, but it allows for this, which I don't love. So what to do about this then? Honestly, might want to come back here, allow ourselves to play this. We still keep eyes here, which might be good. Because now we can move our pieces. We can decide between coming here and coming here. Can always get back here when and if we want to as well, which is nice. The knight jumps in. But I don't really identify any threats coming from it right now. Let's, I guess, come down here first. Yeah, seems good. Hitting the queen and just developing in general. When and if the queen moves, At some point we might have some batteries staring down here. I'm thinking of this move now. Creating something against the knight. The b pawn can't be moved, so this looks quite good. Now we can come up here perhaps, because our rook doesn't get stuck behind our knight there if that's played. This is covered by our knight. If this is played, this is likely to be our opponent's idea, or plan, I guess. I don't yet see why our opponent resigned, but they blundered something, which is indicated by the evaluation bar. First of all, thanks for the game to our opponent. Let me just have a quick look here. Yeah, our opponent realized apparently they just blundered the knight in one move and immediately resigned. I still think they had a lot to play for here, so I don't think that's a good resignation. But nonetheless, it's played, and we got our win today, which I guess in some way makes up for the loss in our drawn game the other day. I don't feel happy with today's performance, which means I know we made mistakes, but that just means there is stuff to learn. Let's have a quick look here. Yeah, 76.7. Our opponent played with 70.7. I see we did actually have a couple of instances where we were winning prior to this mistake by our opponent, after which they resigned. Let's go through this quickly. I'll just move my microphone first because it was in the way of me pressing the arrows. This was all normal. We had a Najdorf. Apparently this is not the best response, but it's still a book move. This is a book move as well, but it's not blessed by the engine. Let's try to have a look here and understand why and what the best moves are. e5 is best. And then I guess playing for d5 like this. As I mentioned before here, I haven't quite had time to look into e5 in the Sicilian. I know it's quite good in some positions. Just playing with this pawn structure, I don't quite know the ideas, so I do not quite look actively at e5, or I guess consider it at all in most positions. But this and this wasn't entirely accurate. It was not the best move. Here, h5 apparently is quite good. I mean, yeah, it does say h5 here, and the best line, second best move, was b5. But this was good anyways. We're still in book moves. One inaccuracy by our opponent here, and we got equality back. Apparently here we had one move where d5 was best. Let's try to follow that line to understand it better. Let's say our opponent takes, we take, they take, and we take. And honestly, I can't tell you what I missed here because there was probably nothing. I guess I realized the same move was playable on the next move and kind of absent-mindedly played castles just to get to safety first. Should have not rushed and played this first instead, because it was in fact better here. This was, as we identified, a mistake. This was horrendously bad. Our connection here was cut, and the knight had troubles getting back into the game. It's just here I did not quite see what our plan was. Apparently our course of action here starts out with b4. Yeah, this is some bizarre line where essentially we threaten the knight. I didn't see this. It's an interesting line. Let's say the knight moved. Still our opponent is decisively winning. What happens here if we take? They just jump in. Why can't we come here? Because it loses a full piece. So we have to give up the rook there, which is quite bad. But instead, let's have a look. This is a real line. This is what was played. We were in a bad position, but we did find some good moves. I'm glad to see her actually. I identified this approach here as being the best approach and kind of willingly gave up the exchange. I would not have played this because without queens on the board I think it's difficult to play for a win here, or a draw even, because of our, or well, actually it might not be that difficult to play for a draw if the queens are off the board, simply because we have a knight and a pawn and our opponent has 2 pawn islands, so it's not that different in terms of actual balance. So we played a couple of more accurate moves than our opponent here, which is quite nice to see. This apparently lost the game. Let's try to have a look here. I'll try not to look at the engine, or rather I won't press the analysis. Why was this an immediate loss? There has to be something concrete here in terms of tactics. So what is the move? I can't see a way of taking this pawn, to be honest. I was looking at the knight here, but it's defended by the queen. Maybe this? Yeah, this is the move, for sure. Yeah, it's best because I realize here there is a loose knight and we had a way of forcing the queen away from the defense of the knight. And here this is best actually, which is a bizarre move. But why can't we take here in this position? Well, we can, I guess, and we just win material and end up with a better position. But we could have taken here as well, and this would have been just as good. Or well, slightly better. Neither of us saw that move. Would have been really nice to see it. I just guess I did not, first of all, identify the queen being loose in the its defense of the knight, and second of all, I did not consider this horizontal defense here of the pawn if it's pushed. This was another massive mistake. Let's try to find the best move. Okay, there has to be something concrete here, I'm guessing. How is it we win the game in one move here? Well, it doesn't have to be one move though, but probably is. Probably is not this. Does it include this move? This might be the move actually. Forcing the rook, or sorry, the knight back. Can't go here or here, can't go here. It's lost if it goes here or here as well. Can't go here. So it can come here and block the defense from the queen towards the pawn, and if it goes here it blocks the rook's defense and we just win material. Let's check if this was indeed the move. No, it's not. It loses the game. I'm just blind. No, that's bad. But no, I do see the move. I guess I just don't quite understand it immediately. this is the move which just seems to win the game immediately. Or well, there are two moves, bishop to d5 as well. Let's follow the line because I, for one, do not see why. Why is this so crushing? I guess there is just some computer line here where we just get several tempi in a row. Because this is not something concrete in terms of one or two tactical or a one or two move tactical idea. This is a several move sequence. Let's say our opponent comes here and we go here. Now it's just difficult for our opponent. Yeah, that's kind of funny. That's kind of funny, I didn't see it. And this. Luckily here, our opponent ended off the game with three blunders in the span of 4 moves. It happens. It's happened to the best of us and to all of us. So we end up with a win today. We're up to 1478 ELO. 22 points away from our goal. It's always a bit fun in those Sicilians here with massive tactics, but it's not always that easy to consistently win when we're both prone to blundering. Anyways, this has been our game for today, guys. Thanks to our opponent cbar84 again for the game. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I hope to see you all tomorrow. Bye bye.